meeting here on Tuesday night, the Solidarity Center, that we were asked to host by Egyptian Islamic leaders in New York and New Jersey, some of whom we've known for years. 2 years ago in the streets in the huge demonstrations against Mubarak, years before that in countless demonstrations for Palestine and so many other issues. And they asked to meet with us about the encampment going on in Cairo and about the military coup, because they felt there were huge misunderstandings within the political movement about that. And we were asked to invite a few organizations. There were 10 organizations here, I think. And so it was an exchange. They wanted us to help them write some material to explain the situation in Egypt today, and we agreed. Now, they were thinking of maybe building a meeting weeks into the future. And at the very end of the meeting, we asked, look, developments have changed so sweepingly, have swung in huge ways in Egypt. Shouldn't there be a plan if the military moves in days for an emergency response demonstration? And so they said, yes, it was agreed to meet at the Egyptian mission to the UN if the military moved. Now, little really did we know, just a few hours later, maybe not even 5 hours later, the early hours of Wednesday morning, there was an incredibly brutal, minutely planned massacre that took place in Cairo on a really horrific scale. An encampment that had been organized by the Muslim Brotherhood and had thousands and thousands of supporters, and they had for 6 weeks been camped there and set up huge tents and field hospitals and schools and all manner of really an infrastructure for people to come and join them. And people came before work and after work and slept there at night and so on. What happened Wednesday was that the military, without any warning, as a matter of fact, described in the news today, they had intentionally sent out word that they would go slowly and over weeks try to sort of starve the encampment down and restrict. But instead, without any warning, with a massive array of force, they went in with helicopter gunships, with armored bulldozers, with tanks, with gas, with missiles. It's really horrific pictures even of burned bodies. The descriptions today in the New York Times and the Washington Post describe even hospitals crammed with the wounded and the dead, and how the military moved in and forced all the medical staff to evacuate and leave at gunpoint the dead and wounded behind. And then the military took over these sites. By the most conservative estimates, they're saying more than 500 dead and thousands wounded. Other estimates are much, much higher. And there's no way to know who's doing the counting. Now, the military has really appointed, since the coup that took place following massive, kind of orchestrated, but important demonstrations over many grievances, many shortcomings of the government, of the elected Muslim Brotherhood government, and of President Mohamed Morsi. And there were huge demonstrations on the one-year anniversary of Morsi's beginning presidency. Immediately after that, the military used it as an excuse to throw the government out. It was really a coup, although many didn't understand it as a coup. And there were many forces, including in Egypt, which applauded this move and embraced the military and the police and said this is great, and they wanted Morsi out. It quickly became apparent, though, in the 6 weeks since then, as the military moved to take over every area. They appointed 17 army generals and 2 police generals. The head of, there's 27 different Egyptian states. They put their apparatus in place everywhere. And after yesterday's horrific, really they cleared the camp. They cleared the camp in the most brutal way. and it's now totally in ashes. They have declared a 1-month state of emergency. Now, no one should expect that the military is thinking of a 1-month state of emergency. The last state of emergency lasted 30 years. 30 years where the military was in absolute control. That was the Mubarak dictatorship, political parties, meetings, unions, demonstrations, rallies, all kinds of activity, severely restricted, prohibited, political activists hunted, the jails full. And that is true for communists, left forces, unions, and the Muslim Brotherhood and other religious forces. Now, how did they justify both the coup and then this incredible massacre yesterday? They said this was a war against terrorists. And this was a war against terrorism. The media has had this relentlessly for weeks and weeks. It's the only thing you hear, this calling on the military to act against the terrorists. Now, how do we view this? And I have only a few minutes, and this is something we've had many articles, meetings on, so I just want to touch on where do we start on this? It's always looking first and foremost. This is the center of an empire. What is U.S. imperialism up to, and what's their role? And unless you start with that, it's totally confusing. And it's just a key point for a revolutionary party here in the center of imperialism. For more than 3 decades, the Egyptian officer caste has been completely paid by the Pentagon. It's one... And a lot more in perks and equipment and loans and credit. That's $4 million a day, every day, for 35 years. That really adds up. The officer caste is a huge apparatus that lives in enormous wealth, controls a great deal of this wealth, and owns really what's considered today 40% of the Egyptian economy. And the ranks, of course, of the military are among the poorest. Why does the U.S. want to finance the Egyptian military? It's absolutely key to U.S. corporate policy in the entire region. They have Operation Bright Star, joint military maneuvers every other year. These take, months of planning and training. The military officers, they come to school here, and there are all kinds of exchanges that are built up. And then there's a deep state, what's called in Egypt a deep state. That's a secret apparatus, which in 100 threads is connected to the deep state that very much exists in the U.S. From the NSA to the FBI to the CIA, they all have relations with Egypt, too. Now, in the face of this massacre, what's going on in Washington? There's sort of a hand-washing and a slap on the wrist. They kind of roll out the violence lecture. This level of violence is really unfortunate. You should play nice, and tis, and maybe we're going to have to postpone military maneuvers right now. But what was at stake? And it's important to know because defeating this elected government is really what it was all about, and doing it in 100 ways by spreading chaos and sabotage, but also the IMF demanding that the Morsi government cut subsidies in the most basic supplies. There was a squeeze on credits. There were shortages everywhere. At the same time, U.S. imperialism wants stability, and they were trying to negotiate a deal to get the Brotherhood to go along with this coup and their ouster from office, and they were resisting with this encampment. In the past 6 weeks, there have actually been 2 other massacres, not on this scale, but where about 100 people were killed and hundreds wounded. Now, why does the Egyptian military want to smash the Muslim Brotherhood? It's really because its base is the poorest in Egypt, both the rural and urban poor. It is a conservative, religious-based party. This is not a revolutionary organization. But The Muslim Brotherhood has survived decades in prisons and has established schools and hospitals and clinics, and that is the basis of their support among the poor. In a society where there's little and people can barely survive, those who can provide basic necessities have deep loyalty. So they're well organized. And it's that base that the U.S. and the Egyptian military feared. Not the program. The program was to conciliate, to go along in every way, to try to make a deal. Morsi was really an office holder. He held no power whatsoever and was reminded of that daily. The judiciary, who were all Mubarak, the dictatorship of Mubarak, all his appointees still controlled the judiciary, and they just dissolved the lower parliament, which was an elected body. They threw out all kinds of appointees, and people who had been elected just declared it not so. So during this whole time, it's important to recognize that the Muslim Brotherhood didn't reach out to the revolutionary elements. That's true. And they did seek to make a deal on many issues. On many issues. But nevertheless, they're very holding elected office. And the fact that and the workers, the masses went to the polls 6 times. I mean, when you think about it, for the Constitution, for the Parliament, for the presidency, but it wasn't just an electoral struggle. There was enormous ferment. The workers were on the move. There were strikes and takeovers and sit-ins all over Egypt that have been going on. And the day before this massacre, actually, the military broke a steelworkers strike. They just smashed it. That's what they want to put down. That's what they're trying to destroy. During the 6 weeks since the coup, during the encampment, there's 600 leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood where there were arrest warrants. Morsi and his whole government were being held in secret detention. So it's important to understand this situation and this push and pull, because no matter what the Brotherhood did, they were considered not a reliable force, both by the U.S. and by the Egyptian military. Okay. Not for the anchor that the U.S. seeks for its domination in the whole region. They may have been willing to make deals and to collaborate and to go along, including, we could look at the role of the Muslim Brotherhood in Syria, where they're engaged with the U.S. in trying to overthrow the government of Syria. Now, that's a different political grouping, another country away, but it's the same current. But it really is the base that the Brotherhood had, and the ferment, the motion that's going on in Egypt today that the military is seeking to absolutely destroy. Now, just in the closing couple of minutes, I want to say, because this is a big debate within the left and forces both in Egypt and here, because anything that's a debate in the key country of the entire, Middle East, North Africa, it gets reflected here. It gets reflected in the political movement here. There are all kinds of forces that actually supported the coup in Egypt and here, said this was a good thing, get rid of the Brotherhoods, religious force, we need a secular government, we need revolutionary forces. They could condemn all the shortcomings of the Brotherhood. But when you block with the police, when you block with the military and applaud their actions, it will come back and destroy the workers' movement the next day. And it spread a very dangerous illusion. And this was a position taken, including by the Tamarad, the January 25th movement, the forces of the Arab Spring, Egyptian Communist Party, of applauding the police and the military. Now, in the articles that Joyce Chediak, that Fred Goldstein, that have been in Workers' World newspaper, again and again they've raised both explaining the role of the state. These are the times it's key to understand. Or as Fred said, they lost a golden opportunity, the left in Egypt, to forge unity with the Islamic masses in the face of a fascist coup. This was a time to come out and call for unity, jobs, bread, expropriate the rich. This was the time and the moment to do it, not to applaud the police in massacres and mass arrests. The left could have undermined the military by appealing to the soldiers, the poorest, the rank and file. And today, on the basis of this massacre, some have a clearer view, and others are actually in a shocking blame the victim scenario, saying that the Muslim Brotherhood brought it on themselves, that they used their ranks by having this encampment as cannon fodder, that by resisting they brought it on themselves. Now, everyone in this room knows where we stand. We never, ever blame the victim. No matter what, no matter any shortcomings, any differences with program, when there is a police attack, it's on the most oppressed in society, we know where we stand. And that's crucial in a workers' party here. It's the whole basis of Marxism. It's a basis of any class understanding. So I do want to encourage everyone here to read the past articles, and to look at the past talks. It's an opportunity also really to explain the importance of you got to smash the state. You can't be an office holder. You'll be paralyzed by the old state. But most important, and we have to take this lesson, that the opportunity and the importance of fighting for unity against the police, against imperialism, that is key. Now, there was a demonstration, 5 hours notice on Wednesday. It was several hundred people. We were the only left force there. We were the only left force there, with signs, with banners, and I think just about, every one of us were asked to speak because they were so glad that there were people standing with them in the face of this massacre. There is a very important demonstration on Wednesday. I'm sorry, that was Wednesday. On Friday. Again, 44th Street and 2nd Avenue at the Egyptian Mission to the UN. We want to urge everyone here to go and to stand up to the massacre, to stand for unity, to show what should be done, and to learn the lessons in the struggle here, and to also understand it in the struggles in Egypt. Thank you.